Kmele, what do you make of it? Because I do think the internal war on the right is interesting. Of course, the left is loving it. They're bathing in it. They're rubbing it all over themselves. They love the war. I don't know. I think it's healthy to have these debates. I don't think they need to get super personal and nasty. I'm not sure why they always have a tendency to do that, but I find it really fascinating to listen to the different positions. And look, there's always a few exceptions who are just nutcases who are out there saying like, you should be impeached over this. And then there's the people who always go to how evil the Jews are. Like those people I just write off and I try not to even mention them. It's not worth it. But like mainstream, smart, invested, America-loving commentators are interesting to me. You know, they're interesting to me. And I think we're learning from like the Tucker-Ted debate, the Tucker-Levin debate now, and some of the back and forth we've seen on X from lesser known players, but probably everybody who, everybody on this screen knows.
Yeah, I think since the beginning of this administration, there's always been a lot of questions about how this very diverse cast of characters manages to get along with each other over the long run. And we certainly saw a lot of this consternation around the Elon Musk fallout and the just broader kind of tech bro faction of MAGA, which is a third kind of element of this story that a moment ago we were talking a lot about that things quieted down, and now we have the kind of foreign policy tensions that have come to the forefront. As Welch pointed out, the fact that the president can give a speech that seems to point in one clear direction and then take an action that points in what seems to be the polar opposite direction makes it hard for any of these factions to think that they own him completely. It probably does, I think, make people a little more reluctant to imagine that they can push the cart in one direction or another. So it'll be interesting to see if there's another opportunity for, say, Tucker Carlson to have to take a position publicly that is in sort of strident opposition to the president. I think a lot of Republicans have kind of had to hold their nose while supporting certain things like the Great Big Beautiful Bill, which, is supposed to curtail spending, but also contains a hell of a lot of spending and doesn't really seem to be curtailing it. It's been interesting to see how they've had to navigate all of these different tensions and how they've managed to survive them unscathed. Certainly, if the current circumstance with Iran and Israel, if that manages to hold, that's great. It certainly seems like we've kind of insulated ourselves from any kind of potential fallout from the strike, at least in the short run. But had things been protracted a bit longer, had there been more kind of looming questions about whether or not the United States would get more deeply involved, then perhaps there'd be even more tension. But at the moment, they seem to be weathering this storm. And the folks are falling back in line. And I suspect that'll probably continue to be the case, irrespective of what happens going forward.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure they'll be polling out any day now on how Trump's doing. Going into this, like last Friday, he was, I think, at 56%. He's crushing it in the polls right now, higher than Obama was at this point in his term, definitely higher than Biden. Like his approval ratings have been extremely strong, higher than they ever were for Trump. We'll see whether this is increased or decreased the numbers. I think it's going to increase, even though people are not in favor of war with Iran. And in advance of the dropping of the bomb, we're not in favor of dropping the bomb. So, but Trump is so transparent about everything. And I think it's going to go well. I just want to say one other thing. The Jeb Bush thing is, I have a personal connection to this because when he was running for president against Trump in 2015-16, he gave me his first interview. I believe we were at Liberty University. And we sat down and I asked him, knowing what we know now, would you have authorized the invasion of Iraq like your brother did? And he said yes, and didn't say that it was a mistake. And I mean, I many people would later say at that point his candidacy was killed in its crib because that was the wrong answer by 2016. It was very clear to most Americans by 2016 that the Iraq War was a mistake and that it shouldn't have been undertaken. Anyway, so then he went out on the presidential debate stage and Trump, this outsider comes in from nowhere and starts hammering him on it. You couldn't say it was a mistake. It was an obvious mistake. And Jeb Bush was really caught there because he'd given me that terrible answer, which he tried to clarify a couple of days later, saying he'd misunderstood me, even though the question was super clear. And it's his brother's war, so he doesn't want to throw him under the bus. And it's Trump, so no one wanted to bend the knee to him and say this outside weird guy with the weird hair, he's right and I'm wrong and my brother was wrong. So it was like, it was totally fraught. And that really helped propel Donald Trump, that debate and him hammering Jeb Bush straight to the nomination and then the presidency. So it is kind of a remarkable full circle moment now to see Jeb Bush praising Trump for an aggressive military action in the Middle East and Trump accepting the compliment and, sort of glad handing with now what is clearly a high energy Jeb.
And where was that debate? It's important to point out. It was in South Carolina, a big military state. Of all places to go after the Bush family, to go after John McCain, you're going to do it in South Carolina. And Trump said, yes, F yes.
I think
we got to drop for the podcast, guys. Let's drop in a soundbite of that debate. Sorry for my SiriusXM listeners. We don't have it at the ready.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. All right. Now, you can take it any way you want. And it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say. And he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
I could care less about the insults that Donald Trump gives to me. It's blood sport for him. He enjoys it, and I'm glad he's happy about it. But I am sick and tired of him going after my family. While Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did. And he's had the gall to go after my mother.
The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign. Remember that.
He's had the gall to go after my mother.
That's not keeping us safe.
I won the lottery.
Go ahead, Michael.
I think that one of the things that annoys me most about some of these debates is the endless stupid use of the word neocon, which suggests that anyone who wants to have any military action or any military response to anything is a neocon. So I don't think there's actually. Yeah, or like a warmonger, or when Tucker said, I really disagree with him, that Mark Levin enjoys when people blow up. That's what his guiding ideology is, watching people die in the battlefield. I think that this is both crazy and wrong, and I also think that Trump acknowledges that he can go to Saudi Arabia and denounce neocons and neoconservatives and do what he did in Iran, and actually, keep those two thoughts in his head at the same time. Mostly because when Tucker is on Emily's show, and congratulations to Emily, who's great on her new show, and everyone should watch and listen. I think that the thing that's when he brings up Iraq, much in the way Matt did earlier, and I did too, is that, there's lessons to be learned from that, a million lessons to be learned from that. But I think that how Trump sees foreign policy as a neocon thing or not a neocon thing, the specific thing, and again, you don't want to get into a boring definitional argument about what a neoconservative is, but it's that we can come in and, create democracy. We can install things that people are just desperate and waiting for democratic institutions to be created by the Americans. What Donald Trump is saying in Iran is that we're going to blow up your nuclear facilities that are in Fordo under a mountain. We're not going to go in there and try to create a new parliament. We're not going to try to come in and create elections. I think that's a very, very distinct and different thing. We don't want to stay. We don't want to be there at all. I mean, so the boots on the ground is the thing that Iraq is all about. There's no threat. I think there's a 0% chance of boots on the ground in Iran, American boots on the ground.
Agree.
No Americans would. I mean, as you pointed out, it's actually an important thing to point out. The polling suggests that people weren't psyched about this, mostly because there are a lot of people that aren't psyched about Trump in certain ways, particularly amongst Democrats. But if you look at the polling, and our pal Harry Anton was breaking this down the other day, and this shows you something about the supposed split between the kind of isolationists and the more traditional Republicans or so-called neocons. That's a kind of Twitter debate in a lot of ways, because if you look at the polling that Harry showed, it was like 75% of Republicans were on board with the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. I don't know if those polls, how accurate they are, if they'll stay,
But it suggests that, the people that are not interested in neoconservatism, not interested in American adventurism abroad, or, installing new governments are okay with what Trump did, because Trump isn't acting like a neoconservative in that traditional sense that we
and
can
he doesn't
overthrow
sound like one.
governments.
Like you'd know if he were. You'd have a
he
different
doesn't.
feel. He's just so direct on everything. He doesn't try to hide anything. It's like Hannity said to me many years ago. The problem with Trump is not that he lies too much; it's that he tells the truth. It's all out there, just good, bad, or ugly for the beholder. All right,
and he's been retweeting Hannity all day, and Hannity is the one in the kind of Tucker universe who's one of the bad guys at Fox who's pushing for war, and Trump has been retweeting, retruthing, whatever you say, his stuff in the past 24 hours. So tells you something.
We are days away from what has been dubbed by some the Rio Reset, what some worry could be a threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, that's Russia, China, India, and Iran, and some more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering, its value. Some report that they've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? One option is to diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word MK letters to 989898. July 6th could mark a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.